Okay, everybody, please. Okay, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. So, welcome back. As we say in the Jewish culture, Shabbat is coming. It's been a long, but an intense, but I think productive week. So we're one more day, and we can be free for the weekend and chill out and hopefully do wonderful things. And I think today we have, this morning we have a wonderful, two wonderful people who will be presenting important issues. The first person that will speak is Mandisa Fatyela. Mandisa is an old friend and colleague, and I can say a comrade. I don't know if people in this room even know what a comrade is, but she was a comrade, is a comrade. I'll give a lecture on what a comrade is one day. Mandisa is from Cape Town, Guguletu, in South Africa, and lives in the capital Pretoria in South Africa with her family. Mandisa has a master's degree in sociology from Concordia University in Montreal, and an MA in policy development and practice from the University of Cape Town. Mandisa is also trained in international human rights by the Raoul Wallenberg Institute of Human Rights at the University of Lund in Sweden, and has a Gestalt consultant. She's a Gestalt consultant by the Gestalt Institute in Ohio. Mandisa is for more than 26 years working in public policy and government. Mandisa is currently doing research on issues related to her PhD on government policy. She's a human rights activist, a public policy analyst, and a strategic planner, and a constitutionalist at heart. The young man next to me is Fentahun Assefa-Dawit. Fentahun has been appointed as the director of the African program here at ISGAP, and his goal is to expand our work in Africa and related matters. He's currently working on developing projects in Morocco, Rwanda, and South Africa. We're also talking about an amazing, I'll be very brief, an amazing project that will bring African American and Jewish American youth to a program similar to this, and then to bring them to West Africa to see West African culture and the history, the origins of the slave trade, bring them to Auschwitz, and then to the free land of Israel, and to learn about the culture, not the images, but the culture that people have. And I think this could, make people more conscious. If we could pull this off, it would be incredible. Thank you. Fentahun has been actively engaged in community service, advocacy, and leadership development. He has managed 2 Jewish agency absorption centers. These are places where immigrants come to Israel to integrate into society. They're sort of temporary residents and communities. So he managed 2 of these centers. It's very important work. And he helped to oversight thousands of new immigrants from around the world, but particularly Ethiopia to Israel. His work includes the protection of immigrants during the difficult time of the Lebanon War in 2006. Fentahun also served as the executive director of Tribeca, which is an advocacy organization for justice and equality for Ethiopians living in Israel. Today, the lecture, so Mandisa will go first. Mandisa's talk is entitled Reimagining a World Without Racism, Prejudice, Discrimination, and Anti-Semitism, Why Some Members of our current generation have not learnt from the Holocaust and from apartheid. A very important subject, and it doesn't get more serious. And Fentahun, the title of his talk is Anti-Semitism, Racism, and Ignorance. So Mandisa, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you'll come here next year in person, and the floor is yours.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Yes, I hope there will not be another virus. We never know, we live in interesting times. Hi everyone, I wish I could see you all. I was there in 2018. And let me just quickly get into my presentation and what triggered this. What triggered this title actually is South Africa itself. And probably what's going on in the US that I've been watching on TV. I'm concerned about the new generation that seem not to be learning from the past. It could be a few people, but even if there are a few, I think we have an obligation to make sure that young people learn from the past. And it's not only about what's happening in the world only, but it's also about what's happening in South Africa. Let me quickly say that my focus would be on what measures are in the South African Constitution to make sure that we as South Africans, we do not promote hate amongst each other. And if you do step out of the line, the Constitution of South Africa will deal with you in a manner that is possible. But we hope, or I hope, that we won't necessarily have to get there with the new generation. For example, more than a month ago, there are many incidents that have happened here in South Africa. But more than a month ago, 2 months ago, a student at the University of Stellenbosch was disciplined and was expelled from the university. This is a white student. Why? He was coming, according to the story in the newspapers, he was coming from a bar with his colleagues. He decides to go into a room of a black student who was asleep. The door was not closed or locked. And he decides to open the door and urinate on his computer and books. So how old is this young man? 19 years old. When did South Africa become free? 1994. So in South Africa, there is a term for these young people who were born after Mandela was released from prison, and we call them born frees. That shook the entire country, because the question was, why it looks like it's difficult for some of us to get rid of some of these apartheid tendencies in our country. So I just thought that let me share with you what our Constitution says that will get you into trouble if you come to South Africa to promote hate, or if you are in South Africa and you are so full of hate that you can't control yourself. We do have Chapter 9 or constitutional institutions that are in place. We have enough arsenal of legislation that will deal with these tendencies. But I must say, before I quickly get into my presentation, that the issue of this young man urinating on a black student laptop and books, and then when the black student wakes up and says, "What are you doing? What are you doing in my room?" And this guy used the K word, which I won't repeat here. I'll be very happy if you can Google. It's like the N word in South Africa. To say this is what he does to staff appointed by the K people. Now, I just thought that let me start by saying, as the world, we are obligated to do better and go beyond the formal curriculum development and academic scholarship to fight racism and anti-Semitism. I listened very carefully to Professor Katia or Mavara on Tuesday or Monday, who said that anti-Semitism is racism. So we need to reflect on many of these concepts and see what we can do and why we seem to have young people now joining and doing wrong things that they know they shouldn't be doing, but also doing them, some of them doing them consciously, knowing that they will get into trouble. Like here in South Africa, you just don't you will get into trouble if you actually embark on any behavior that is deemed to be, what's the right word? Let me just say silly or discriminatory. Now, so I just thought that maybe if I use the South African Constitution as a case study and open up my presentation with what Mandela bequeathed to us as South Africans as the first president of the country. You must remember that this constitution, the first person who presided over this document was Mandela himself as the first president. And Mandela said, one of the most important milestones of our young democracy was the recent adoption of our constitution. It lays a firm basis for the religious and cultural freedom of all our people. He continued to say, we place our vision of a new constitutional order for South Africa on the table, not as conquerors, prescribing to the conquered. We speak as fellow citizens to heal the wounds of the past with the intent of constructing a new order based on justice for all. Now, Mandela knew that black people are a majority in South Africa. And Mandela knew that one day we may be forced probably, or even think of retaliation. So Mandela and his colleagues, when they adopted this constitution, prepared us to be able to act civil towards each other, but also know that other organs of state or the courts that are responsible for the interpretation of this constitution to guide us when incidents like those of the university student of Stellenbosch take place. Because those incidents, they tend to actually get black people in the country very, very angry under the collar. Now, I'm starting, my slide is talking about Arthur Chackalson. Arthur Chackalson, the late Arthur Chackalson was a judge, the first Chief Justice of our Constitutional Court. He's of Jewish heritage. And he was, consciously so, appointed by Mandela as the first Justice of the new democratic South Africa. It was not a mistake. Arthur Chackalson was there defending Mandela when Mandela was arrested with the other Rivonia trialists, if you Google the Rivonia trial. So it was not a mistake. So Arthur Chackalson, George Bezos, and others were there. But also Mandela was mindful that there are many Jewish people who were part of the liberation struggle in South Africa. Arthur Chackalson and Just Goldstone and others were there as well, but also operating from the legal sphere. So I think in Mandela's way, he was making a statement by appointing Arthur Chackalson to the first Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court. But I want you to reflect on what Chackalson said amongst the many statements that he has given as the Chief Justice of that court. He said the very reason for establishing the new legal order and for vesting the power of judicial review of all legislation in the courts was to protect the rights of minorities and others who cannot protect their rights adequately through the democratic process. Those who are entitled to claim this protection include the social outcasts and marginalized people of our society. Coincidentally, I was reading the Sunday Times of the previous Sunday when I saw this. It was captured in an article that I was reading. Then I thought that let me share it with you so that you process who this man was, who was the first Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court. I therefore say to you that anti-Semitism will not be tolerated in South Africa, but this does not mean that all is well in our country. As I've said to you that you still have to deal with issues of the legacy of racism. I've just quoted one case, but if you Google South Africa, you can read more about certain incidents of racism that are really troubling. Now you may ask yourself, how do you feel as Black South Africans in particular about anti-Semitism? On this note, I can probably just share with you that most Black South Africans who are in the majority, remember, it's not just a small majority. We're talking about people who are like 80%, who constitute 80% of the population of South Africa. They are probably captured in bread and butter issues, but what they are concerned about is racism and prejudice and discrimination against anyone whenever that rears its ugly head. So it's important, therefore, that we actually pay attention to what this constitution of this small country at the tip of Africa says and probably wants to share with the world. Very quickly, let me just refer to a quote that Archbishop Tutu said in talking about Mandela. Archbishop Tutu, who passed on last year, warned us about banalizing the meaning of Mandela as the first. Mandela is a human being, and I guess as the first president of the Republic. But also, he knew that Mandela was never going to promote any attack on race, ethnicity, or religion. But I also want to capture what Cornel West, when he visited South Africa, said. He said something very mindful, very profound, which I thought I should share with you as you reflect on what to do with this generation that seem to be probably not have learned from both the Holocaust and apartheid. Cornel West said, the question is, who are you going to be in the meantime, in the interim, in this time and space? You don't get out of time and space alive who you really are when you take off that mask, when you don't play that role. As I've said, Cornel West visited South Africa and they gave lectures on what was then called, it was a workshop on the meaning of Mandela. And Cornel West, grappling with the issues of America, also said Mandela was a grand unifier, but also Mandela was from a culture of a democratic culture. He was baptized in a democratic culture of being accountable, of accepting criticism, but then also accountability. Well, to proceed, I just want to say it is, we all know that it's well documented that there is a rise of right-wing organizations in the world, anti-Semitism, racism, and other forms. And my proposal is therefore that we get focused as people who are involved with these issues in making sure that we have strong and international legal frameworks to deal with these issues. As I've said before, South Africa, which is the focus of this presentation, I would really share with you what we have as part of trying to educate the young and the restless about not engaging in anti-Semitism or racism or prejudice and discrimination. You know the history of South Africa and the history of Calvinism. If you don't, I will encourage you to go and Google. When we took over this country, we were obviously, the government of the day was dominated by the Afrikaners. And the Afrikaners saw themselves as the chosen people of God. Very interesting. You see, when we invoke God in your trespasses, it becomes a bit awkward and interesting. But the Afrikaners, guided by the Calvinist ideology, saw themselves as the chosen people of God. If you go into one of the publications that were edited by Dr. Small, you will read a bit about what one of the contributors in those publications said, Mr. Shane, about Afrikaner ethno-nationalism. I won't dwell into that, but I just wanted to provide that as a context. For those who are not familiar with South Africa, you understand that we're from a past of ethno-nationalism, or from a past where people believe that they are the chosen people of God. But you are also mindful that apartheid was declared a crime against humanity. In fact, most people seem not to understand South Africa or live outside South Africa, especially black people in the African continent. Those that I've interfaced with, they always ask me that, how come we treat white people as the same as us? I always say to them, go and read about our history. Mandela was not mistaken when he said, we need to celebrate our diversity and live and try and live peacefully as a people. You find that in some of my colleagues in the African continent, they ask us why we treat white people as if they're from South Africa. They don't understand. To me, it's like asking why in America you have white Americans and whether white Americans should go back to where they come from. But there is that subtle also questioning of the South African state, and they don't understand that our constitution enjoins us to celebrate our diversity and nothing else but our diversity. And in South Africa, you have white population which constitute of people of Jewish heritage, Portugal, people from Portugal, people from all over the world, if you can, and the Afrikaners, obviously. And maybe we can discuss about that, some of these issues related to Afrikaners, maybe next year, if I end there. But I just thought that let me touch on what Harold Volpe, one of the veterans in our liberation struggle, when he categorized South Africa as a place where you can actually apply the theory of colonialism of a special type. And what triggered this for me was reading one of the volumes edited by Dr. Small, when he actually referred to the processes of globalization, but to just caution all of us that South Africa is not a perfect country and is also subjected to the processes of globalization as captured in that volume that was edited by Dr. Small. So Harold Volpe said, South Africa, racial domination is not in contradiction to but the condition of capitalist development in South Africa. That was
so, Mandisa, you have about 5 more minutes, okay?
Okay, I'll just jump.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Now, you can read this on your own, what the American Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when he visited Egypt about the history of about the Constitution of South Africa. You can read that on your own. And the South African Constitution is underpinned by the values of human dignity, the achievement of equality, and the advancement of human rights, and also all that is captured in the Bill of Rights. And also it is underpinned by the principle of social justice. So the Bill of Rights enjoins us that not to violate each other's rights, because human rights in South Africa guarantees freedom of association, belief and opinion and expression, equality, and privacy. South Africa has a number of Chapter 9 constitutional institutions that are tasked with the protection of human rights. We have the Constitutional Court, we have the South African Human Rights Commission, we have the Public Protector, we have the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities. Quite a long one. We have the Equality Court, we have the Commission for Gender Equality. Now you ask yourself, how is it possible that we have young people who want to go back and repeat the same mistakes that the people who came before them committed? But also the Bill of Rights also speaks to the limitation of all rights. So this means therefore that you cannot, we are not allowed in South Africa to speak, to engage in hatred, because you have freedom of expression and freedom of speech and freedom of association and freedom of religion. You have to be mindful that other people also enjoy the very same rights. So the freedom of speech does not guarantee you to insult other people and saying that you are claiming your rights. Because the Equality Court and other courts may have to deal with your case. And a few cases actually have served before the Equality Court to give effect to the constitutional principle of ensuring that we do not engage in hate speech when we deal with each other as South Africans on a daily basis. As I've alluded to before, the Constitution gives us rights to dignity, freedom of expression, equal protection and benefit of the law, and freedom and security. Now, there are other laws in South Africa giving effect to the work of this Chapter 9 of Constitutional Constitution. And we have the Promotion of Administrative of Justice Act, the Promotion of Access to Information Act, we have the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Equality Act. And if you feel that your rights have been violated or somebody is engaged in hate speech towards you, you can approach any magistrate's court in South Africa and get your case to set before the Equality Court. It's actually that one not an expensive exercise to engage in, because litigation is expensive, that I understand very well, but it's not that expensive to actually do that here when it comes to issues serving before the Equality Court. Now, the rest of this will talk about what the South African Human Rights Commission is supposed to do to actually protect all of us as citizens. It is there to promote, protect, develop a culture of human rights, and monitor and assess the implementation of those rights. Now, it's quite interesting that with the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities, you can also go to that court if you feel that your religion is being undermined or insulted. The public protector has been very active in the past few years. It is a very important office that is supposed to deal with all matters of state and matters. Anyone in South Africa can refer a matter to them. If you wake up and you say, I'm Jewish and I feel I am being discriminated against, and this is the evidence that I have that I'm being discriminated against, you can actually approach any of these Chapter 9 or constitutional institutions to deal with those matters. Now, briefly, I just want to highlight that. How do you then, will you know that your right is being violated? If you look there, you have to reflect on the questions: who is protected by the right, what is protected by the right, and who is prohibited from that right. Sorry. In conclusion, I just want to say to people that it's very important, I think, for people to begin to relate to the South African Constitution and to study the constitutional principles contained therein, because that could also be assisting to lay groundwork for other countries that they have not adopted some of these constitution to ensure that all citizens that live in the various different countries are actually protected by the law. And I also want to emphasize, in conclusion, the notion of making sure that we review and reflect also on the legal frameworks in our respective countries and make sure that they are progressive and are responsive to the current challenges of today, but also to ensure that we manage and we prevent people from engaging in acts that have caused harm and hate before, and reflect on the impact of the Holocaust and apartheid in our society. On that note, I rest my case. I know that you promote apartheid as apartheid, but I'm South African, so we call it what it is, apartheid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandisa. Thank you very much, Mandisa. So next we have Fentahun, and then we'll come back for Q&A with the both of you. Thank you, Mandisa.
Okay, then.
Thank you.
Can I help with the PowerPoint? Sorry. This is your slideshow, yeah? Of course.
This is how you go? This is how you go?
I think try.
Good morning. Thank you, Mandisa. Nice to meet you. My topic is anti-Semitism, racism, and ignorance. I must warn you to start with, this is not an academic paper, this is not an academic presentation. This will be mainly a personal account and some historical facts.
I'm interrupting you. I can't believe I'm interrupting the speaker.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just want to say, from the pedagogy, from the academic intellectual background that I was trained in, academic work constitutes scholars, people who sit and read and write, but also experts. It could be policy people, it could be musicians and poets, people that have wisdom and insight. And this young man has a lot of wisdom and insight, and he is an expert. So it is an academic paper.
Thank you. So I can finish my presentation here, and thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I will be touching a little bit about the history of Ethiopian Jews. So Judaism, in Ethiopia there are three main religions, Christianity being the largest, Islam and Judaism. Now it's rarely close to nothing. So Judaism in Ethiopia dates back to over 2 millennia, perhaps during the time of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And then after, some of the Jews might have come through the other times, through Egypt. I'm not going to go into that. Christianity, the largest religion, dates back to the 4th century during King Azana, emperor of Aksum's kingdom. Islam, second largest religion, and was introduced to Ethiopia in the 7th century. The Beta Israel, the house of Israel, the Jews have had for many centuries kingdom in Ethiopia. This is very least known to the world. Created after Ezana was crowned. Ezana, as a Christian king, was crowned in the emperor of Aksum. Ezana was educated in his childhood by the missionaries and declared Christianity as a religion of the Aksum Empire. Beta Israel refused to convert and started revolting. This led to a civil war between the Beta Israel and the Christian population. Beta Israel forged an independent state, northwest of Ethiopia, bordering through the northeast of Sudan. Mid-19th century, Empire of Aksum began expansion. This led to an armed conflict with Beta Israel kingdom under King Gideon IV, who is a Jewish king. Mid-19th century, after Gideon IV was there and were fighting against the Aksumite kingdom, he managed to defeat the Aksum forces, but was killed towards the end of the combat. And then Gideon's daughter inherited the kingdom from her father and took command. This daughter's name was Judith. Later was named by the Ethiopian as Gudit. Gudit in Amharic means evil. The reason for this name evil is Judith started to revenge what the Christians have done for many centuries against the Jewish people, and she started burning, destroying church and Christian places. Many Beth Israel were massacred, and the rest were forced to convert to Christianity after some centuries of leadership of the Jewish dynasty. And then those who were not massacred and left alive were forced to convert to Christianity. Many of them have conceded and converted to Christianity, and those who refused to be baptized were given an ultimatum. That is, he who baptized in the Christian religion may inherit the land of his father. Otherwise, let him be a Falasi or a Falasha. This is a name that was given, or the Jews of Ethiopia, the Beta Israel, were known for most as the Falasha people. This name comes from the time when the Jews were defeated. And then, instead of continuing and diminishing the Jewish people, they found out the Beta Israel are seen as essential labor for the kingdom. No need to exterminate them. Taking ownership on the Jewish religion, but leaving the Jewish people to serve the kingdom, to work as servants, to do some hated jobs. King Lalibela, who reigned between 1181 to 1221, he wanted to make a replica of Jerusalem in Lalibela, which is the northwest part of Ethiopia. And he then started to build churches. His church were Rock Heaven Church, very well known in the world. And these churches were, as you can see, one of the church has a shape of a cross. And what's interesting with this is, when I say taking ownership of the Jewish religion, they do not want to separate themselves from the Jewish religion, but the Jews are not welcomed, but the Jewish religion can serve them. If you can see from the interior of the church, you can see a Star of David. And these are in these very famous church. That means King Lalibela saw himself coming from the dynasty of the Solomonites or any Jewish background, to make sure that he is seen as an authentic king. Here you can see some of the other churches in other places used to have a Star of David in front of them. But later they removed it because they didn't want to be seen or recognized as supporting the Jewish cause, or not wanting to be linking themselves to the Jewish tradition. The Emperor Haile Selassie, the Lion of Judah, he took the Lion of Judah as the national symbol of Ethiopia. King Haile Selassie, the last emperor of Ethiopia, referred to himself as the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. His symbol being as the lion, he had in his palace lions and tigers. As you can see, this is his pet, very little pet. The fence of the king's palace is decorated by a Star of David and cross alternately. You can see, if you go and visit Ethiopia, the palace, you see a Star of David and a cross. That means, being the conquering lion of tribe of Judah, he sees himself a direct linkage with the Judean tribe. Beta Israel, after being defeated by war, one of the things besides becoming a falasha and not owning a land, and they were also considered not a human being, but considered like a dangerous animal, hyena. This hyena, I was called in schools, anywhere I went, by the Christian people as a hyena. Imagine me waking up in the morning as a normal person, but people see me. At sunset, some kind of tail will merge in my back, and I will become a hyena. This was life. The tragedy is not when people look at others in eyes of racial discrimination, anti-Semitism, or any other prejudice. And the tragedy is more painful when people start to admit whatever is said to them by others, and they start living with it because they cannot do anything about it. So for many centuries, this was life for Ethiopian Jews, for the Beta Israel, being deprived the rights of owning a land. They started to be employed as labor workers. They used to build churches. They became blacksmiths, potters, weavers, etc., etc. These professions were hated by the other Ethiopians, especially pottery and blacksmith involved fire. When they saw a Jew person hitting a metal and bending a metal, they say, if this person can bend a metal, what could he do to a human being? And therefore, Jews of Ethiopia, I, as Fentahun, a young man going to school, my friends used to tell me, friends, Fentahun, don't eat at please. Don't eat us please, literally. Jews were, believed to have been able to eat people. So, not only that, with the little that the Ethiopian Jews had, they were not also allowed to exercise their Jewish tradition. Synagogues were sealed alternately, time again. You see here a synagogue in a village where I was born and raised. If you see the left picture, the very left young man is sitting here in front of you. Next to my teacher, Rabbi Abeva Brahan, may his soul be blessed. He died in Ashdod after making Aliyah. And the right picture is the last monk of the Jewish people, whom I had the privilege to teach Hebrew. And when he came to the village, he didn't know any word of Hebrew. I remember he will sit me down with him in the recess time, will force me to teach him Hebrew. All of a sudden, after a couple of months, he's already been able to translate the Torah from Hebrew to Amharic, and translating the Torah from Hebrew to Amharic is something that needs years of study, but he grasped it very, very quickly. Wow. As I mentioned before, pottery, blacksmithing, hated professions, and these jobs were done only by the Jewish people. Non-respected jobs. Fast forward, contact with the world Jewry. End of the 19th century, contact was established with Jews outside of Ethiopia. There were some contacts before that, but this was the most meaningful contact that was established with the Ethiopian Jewry, with the external world. In 1904, Dr. Jacob Feitlovich traveled to Ethiopia and discovered the Beta Israel. He mobilized the movement to rescue Ethiopian Jews. Dr. Feitlovich was a Polish-born scholar who studied in Paris, and he dedicated the rest of his life to studying about the Ethiopian Jews and, again, mobilizing a movement to rescue and bring Ethiopian Jews to Israel. Aliyah in Hebrew means migration to Israel, ascending to Israel. When you go from, I live in Israel, and when I go to Jerusalem, I don't say I go to Jerusalem. I say I ascend to Jerusalem. Ascending spiritually. This is climbing up. And when a Jew migrates to Israel, he is ascending spiritually to a higher place. That means migrating to Israel is termed as an aliyah. End of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s, Operation Moses. From the Sudan, nearly 15,000 Jews were rescued and airlifted from the Sudan. Unfortunately, about 4,000 to 5,000 Ethiopian Jews lost their lives either on the way to the Sudan or in the refugee camps of the Sudan. But the Jews were determined. After having gone through these harsh situations for many centuries, many generations, nothing will stop them from going to Israel, fulfilling their forefathers' dreams, and making Aliyah, being reunited with brethren in Jerusalem and Zion. 1991, Operation Solomon, this time directly from Addis Ababa. In one weekend, the Israeli Air Force has airlifted nearly 15,000 Ethiopian Jews from Ethiopia to Israel. This was one of the most popular rescues of people. Over 36 hours, with 37, 38 airplanes involved, the major airlift of Jews from Ethiopia to Israel. Here we have the Prime Minister Isaac Shamir greeting the new Olim at the airport. Well, the Holy Land is not always holy. It's not like we all expected it to be. It's not the honey, the land of the honey and the milk that we were reading about. There are some challenges being in the Holy Land. And these challenges compared to what we've gone through, century-long stay in Ethiopia, harsh as they might be, were not comparable. Not only that, when we lived in Ethiopia and we were called names, we could not do anything about it. But here in Israel, Israel is home. We came back home. Yes, it will be difficult, like in any family. The two brothers will be fighting, family members will be fighting, harsh fight. But at the end of the day, you keep your rights as part of the family. And therefore, yes, there had been many challenges in Israel, religious challenges. The rabbinical authorities wanted to convert the Ethiopian Jews after we kept the religion for thousands of years. They say, hey, this is not according to the halakha. And therefore, although you've been circumcised, you have to go a symbolic circumcision. Yes, the first few arrivals were circumcised. But soon after that, they said, no way. That means if I circumcise today, all what I've gone through all what my parents and their parents have gone through for generations. That means from the moment I'm converted, I will become Jewish. That means dismissing all my history. And therefore the Jews had fought back. And this act of circumcision was stopped. Yes, there were some other social aspects of challenge, which we overcome. Sometimes coming from Africa, yes, in Israel, yes, there is racism, there is discrimination in Israel. Hey, but as many would like to say and would like to see it be, Israel is not a racist country. There is racism in Israel, but Israel is not a racist country. I'm telling this as an Ethiopian Jew who had gone through some hardship even in Israel. Police violence is well known, not only in Israel, but all over the world. Yes, there was some over-policing against the Ethiopian Israelis. But yes, we have resolved all these issues. I will talk about it as we go on. Okay, it's telling me 20 minutes. So yeah. Yeah.
That's where the negotiations begin.
So we did not just say, hey, we're right and you're wrong. You're being discriminating us. But we said, okay, this is what's happening. We need to find a solution for it. The way we found a solution for the conversion problem, we found a solution also for the police violence problem. We found a solution for the schooling problem. We found a solution for everything. It's not perfect yet. It's far from being perfect. But we worked very, very hard. And we came in this approach to say that, hey, to the administration of Israel, to the decision makers, we say to them, this is a mirror that we're bringing for you to look at. This is the image of you. If we cannot fix this problem here, this is how the world will be looking at us. And if Israel says it is the light unto the nations, so be it. This way we started to work. I personally started to work with the chief of the police, with everyone that I need to go and meet. I was the director of Tebeka, the advocacy organization for Ethiopian Israelis. Under this, my responsibility, I met with the chief of the police, I met with the prime minister 7 times. I met with the different ministers, the minister of the interior, the minister of the police, and other ministers, the minister of finance. We sat down and we wrote a program. Not only did we write the program, we made sure the implementation of each and every program that we wrote together. When I came and presented that we need, if you remember, there was a shooting down of an Ethiopian Israeli by a police officer. And the first few demands that I brought to the police was the immediate dismissal of that police officer, the public acknowledgement of the chief of the police that, yes, there is racism, there is discrimination of the police against the Ethiopian Israelis. Body cameras should be introduced into the police force. Rewriting the code of ethics of the police. Listen to this. Rewriting the code of ethics of the police. Massive recruitment of Ethiopian Israelis into the Israeli police officers, etc., etc. All of these have been met. And this is done when I went and met with the people, not only me, you can see some other people meeting together. The activists were against us. We betrayed the Ethiopian cause. They say to us, by meeting the officials, We are saying here, we're supporting them and not the community. But I said, I am in a position, in a time. If I miss this, it will be my responsibility. Although that means, going up the stream, but I chose to take that route. At the end of the day, police violence is down, body cameras are introduced, we rewrote the code of ethics of the police, etc., etc., etc. Personal accounts. Ethiopia. In schools. When we went to school, we walked 5 kilometers from the village to the city to study. As Jews who've had school in the village, we were privileged to have a school in the village at an early age. We were very good students. And we came the first top 3 students. And if you are within the first top 3, you get a prize. Twice, I was said by the teacher, I know what grades I got, but he downgraded the grade in order to replace me with another non-Jewish student. One time it worked. 8th grade, another teacher wanted to do the same. What he didn't know was the principal of that school was a Jew, but he was not identified as a Jew. And I knew him. I went and spoke to him behind the teacher's back. So they reinstalled the original grade, and I got what I needed to get. Confiscation of documents and passports. When I was processing to leave Ethiopia for Canada, I would take documents and present them to the relevant authorities, both in Gondar, the regional municipal office, and in Addis Ababa, the immigration. They confiscated my documents, and they actually said to me, no, you are not going. You are a Jew, you are not going. How did they find out that I'm a Jew? In my name, Fentahun, Assefa-Dawit. Dawit is David. David is a Jewish name. Anyway, it took me 3 months in order to have these documents released and was able to leave. In Canada, a friend did stop to be my friend once he found out that I am a Jew. I was selling encyclopedia, door-to-door selling. We were from Quebec. We went to Ontario. Near to sunset on Friday, I said to my director, look, Shabbat is coming, and I will be stopped working until Saturday night. He says, why? Tell him I'm a Jew. This guy who was working with me, my best friend from Ghana, says to me, hey, Fentahun, you're not supposed to be a Jew. What? You're not supposed to be a Jew. Okay. What else could I have been? A Christian, a Muslim, I don't know, but not a Jew. I say, why? You are so nice a person to be a Jew. And from that moment on, he stopped to be my friend. I remember I was working on my summer break from school in a pharmaceutical company, about 30 minutes drive in Montreal. I was in a bus on my way back. I was tired. I fell asleep. I got to the last stop. I woke up with this huge foot landing on my shoulder. And this was the driver. A French bus driver seeing a black person sleeping, tired. Why should you wake him up? Yes, a huge foot landing on my shoulder. That's how I woke up from this bus. And, I left. Concordia, faculty of engineering refused to accept me when he found out that I'm a Jew. Charles, you remember? You were involved in this. And finally, Israel. my Israel, the one and only Jewish state. I'll tell you my first Israel experience, my first time in Israel, 1989. I was a student at Dawson College. Dawson College had a program, I think still have, Dawson Israel program, for 1 semester to come and study. I was part of that program. I registered to it. I still was with my Ethiopian passport. It was expired. I sent it to New York. Then there was no immigration, not immigration, what do you call it? Consulate. Ethiopian consulate in Canada. They had to send it to New York. I sent my passport. Didn't come back on time. I had to fly on Wednesday. It was Monday night. I don't have any passport. I went to the coordinator, tell her, look, I don't have my passport. She said, what? No passport. What do you do? I don't know, but I have to be in Israel. She says, how? I don't know. I have to be in Israel. And then she tells me, do you have anyone that you know in Israel? I say, yes, Micha Feldman. Micha Feldman worked for the Jewish Agency for many years, and he knows everyone. So she says, okay, call him. I call Micha Feldman, wake him up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Israel time, and say to him, hello, Micha, yes, I want to come to Israel. Okay. And for this, you woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning? I say, yes. So what do you want me to do? My flight is on Wednesday. What? Yes, on Wednesday. So I don't have a passport. Fentahun, you must be kidding me. Let me go back to sleep. No, you're not going to back to sleep until you solve the situation. And he says to me, what do you want me to do? I don't know. Do what you do, and I want to be in Israel on Wednesday. That's it. This is a real conversation. And I reminded him, when he was a consul in the United States, in one of the cities, I forgot which one, he came back to Israel, and he was in my house. And he reminded me, when I met Micha when we were still in Ethiopia, I wrote him a letter. He reminded me, when you wrote me a letter, at the end, you wrote, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yemini. If I forgot Jerusalem, let my right hand forget me. And now what are you doing here in Montreal? And I reminded him that at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he says, okay, let me see what I can do. To make long story short, on Wednesday night, afternoon, we were about to go to the airport. This young man was supposed to drive me from my apartment to the airport. As we were loading the luggage, he left his car's door open. There was another coming and taking his door. And that was something, you remember that. And instead of him taking me to the airport, some other people took me to the airport. The next thing I know is I boarded the El Al plane without any passport. Wow. And I landed in Israel. Wow. And when everybody was lining up to have their passports checked out, I see on the side Micha Feldman waving at me and opened the gate for me. And everyone is waiting there. Me, Fentahun, without a passport, clear customs before everybody else. Wow. And he took me to the side office to get my laissez-passer. That's how I landed to Israel for the first time. Wow. If it wasn't for Israel, even my native Ethiopia wouldn't have let me to its borders without any passport. And this is my first experience, although I always wanted to be, as a Zionist Jew, always wanted to be in Israel. But this was the incident that struck me the most. Ever since then, I say, this is the place, this is where I want to be. And before I conclude with the Am Yisrael Chai, I just want to say this to you. Anti-Semitism, racism, ignorance, they all have the same effect. They all do the same damage. I have gone through all of them. Anti-Semitism, racism, and ignorance. The only thing is, what do we do about it? Unless we take a proactive action, and engage the evil and do something about it, and it has to be very definitive, very aggressive act towards this evil, we are not going to win. We are not going to win a bit, because there are the minority extremes and there is the majority, silent majority or passive majority. If the minority, the evil minority, is not confronted, slowly the majority who is silent will start to believe this is the case, and will start to diffuse towards this strong, very talkative, very dangerous, and very, influential minority groups. We have to act on a decisive way, without any fear. Am Israel High.
So thank you very much, both Mandisa and Fentahun. Thank you. It's a beautiful story how you landed in Israel, but we should remember the first law that was passed by the emergent state of Israel was that every Jew has the right of return, has the right to be there. That's the first law. So, Natan, enjoy the first law. Deidre.
Thank you so much for this. I've listened to many people in Israel speak about their experiences, and I've never heard some of the things that you said today, and it was very, very helpful to me. Thank you. I have to play Jewish geography with you. I went to Dawson and Concordia.
Oh.
So, I also went to Nishmat, which is a women's Orthodox seminary in Israel for studying halakha. And when I was there, there was a cohort of Ethiopian Jewish women who were learning halakha, because this is 15 years ago. At that time, there was this great concern to regulate the halakhic status of Ethiopian Jews. And I listened to what was happening, because they were in the same buildings with us. And they were being taught like Yiddish pronunciations of Hebrew. They were being taught Ashkenazic halakha. And I think today about the changes that have happened in the last 15 years, and the kind of things that you talked about in your talk. I wonder if maybe you could share with the other people in the room the story of Sigd, the holiday, and how it's being integrated into Israeli society today, and how, to me at least, this is a symbol of how Israel is trying to account for the multicultural diversity of the state.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I didn't have the time to go through every detailed activities that was done and the change that we've achieved within the Israeli system. It's not only the Sigd holiday, but other things. That means writing, for example, the curriculum books, books in the curriculum, for example, including dark colored pictures in the books, for example, and many other things. The Sigd is one of the big holidays in Ethiopia, commemorating the rising of the people on top of a mountain, symbolizing the receipt of the Torah at Har Sinai, or in the Sinai Mount. And during this day, it is done during the Shavuot holiday, which is a holiday of that the Torah was given. And thousands of people will gather together, climb up the mountain, pray for the day, and come back and rejoice after the holiday. Here in Israel, after a long discussion, the authorities have incorporated this holiday as a national Israeli Jewish holiday. And every year, if there is a Jewish holiday, you can have, you can choose one of the Jewish holidays to whoever is working to. You're entitled to take 2 Jewish holidays that are working days. It's not a religious holiday. If it is a working Jewish holiday, you can take a day off and you get paid for that. And this SIGD holiday is also included in those list of holidays that you can be credited as in taking a day off. For that. So there are a lot of things we can discuss in depth, but there's no time to go into it. I just want to say what Charles said before. When it comes to Israel, when Israel airlifted the Jews both from the Sudan and Ethiopia, the whole world, the Jewish world, rejoiced. The Israelis were enthusiastic about it. But the Western world, most of the Arab countries in the Western world, said, well, there you have Israel bringing black people from Africa and turning them into slaves. And in my previous job as a director of Tobacco, when the foreign media wanted to interview me, and they want to take me to the area of, is Israel apartheid state? Is this why they are doing what they are doing to the Ethiopian Jews? Is Baltimore compared to what's happening here in Israel with the Ethiopian Israelis? I don't give them the privilege of that, because I say to them, I do not want to go into comparison. Israel is Israel, any other places are any other places. If you compare Israel being as an apartheid state, you don't know what an apartheid is. And therefore, the world, especially the anti-Semite world, would want to find some clue that would give them the privilege to say, hey, Israel is an apartheid state. And we are not going to give them that pleasure. And we have to stand up and fight it, each one of us, in our own way.
One of the professors we work with, several of them
Sorry,
teach this.
I'm sorry. Tyrone? Sorry, we're running out of time.
I appreciate hearing
There's a
their
bud coming.
perspective, because it fills in the gaps. I just think about like the last comment we were saying, like the Western world was saying this, but there are also examples within Israel, right, of those type of that didn't come from the West world, right? Like being, I think the first prime minister invented, even the immigrant from the North Africa who looked like a savage, has never read a book in his life, not even a religious one, doesn't even know how to say his prayers, either wittingly or unwillingly, is behind him a spiritual heritage of 1,000 years, and there is this there. I mean,
Excuse me. What's the source of that?
What's his name? Joseph Massad writes.
Okay, excuse me. So that's the beautiful thing about scholarship is we have to understand the context and the source. Joseph Massad is an out-and-out anti-Semite at the highest order.
Okay.
So if you're going to bring text into the classroom, Joseph Massad is a professor. I don't want to distract from the beautiful presentations we got here.
Sure.
It's as if we're going to bring the grand wizard of the KKK into a classroom and speak about African Americans. So with all due respect, let's move on. There's some amazing questions here. Romy.
But.
Oh, you want to answer
Yeah,
this?
but can I just want to say, I don't know where the source is from, but I can say this to you. Even within Israel, there are some who come up.
I'm just going to say, it's a conversation. If you want to, Tyrone, if you want to have
Tyron, my name is Tyron.
Tyron. If you want to have an informed conversation and you want to bring knowledge to the table and discuss, debate, and even argue about it, that's cool. But I won't tolerate bringing in racist, homophobic, sexist, or anti-Semitic text into this classroom. We have to go beyond it. Know the sources that you bring to the classroom. That's the responsibility of a scholar.
Okay.
Natan, excuse me, Natan, the floor is yours.
Okay, I need
So-
to hear, because you.
Yeah,
you-
what
you
I'm-
cut me off.
what-
I- sorry, go
No,
ahead.
he's responding to your question. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is there are different groups of people and organizations, regrettably I say, who are agitated by other forces to whom the existence of Israel is a pain. And I know for sure, being a civil services organization, head of civil services, I know organizations who happen to be civil servant organizations, but their aim is political. And whenever the right wing or of the political parties are in power, they work very, very hard, and their aim is to topple the government. I'm not saying there are such, but there are some forces who are doing that, and even within Israel. So it's not a secret.
Okay, thank you. Mandisa, could you turn on your camera too? We want to make sure you're part of the conversation. So Romy and Felix.
What's the question for Mandisa?
Mandisa, we have
Yes,
a...
I am.
Okay, you want to sit here? Mandisa, we have a question for you.
Maybe we can remove the screen.
Hi, Mandisa, fellow South African here.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, I'm fine.
Yeah, good to meet
Can
you.
see me?
I can see you. Can see you well. I don't know if you heard the amazing speech of Fentahun here about how, central Israel is to the Jewish people, and the whole, central to our religion and our, our culture and that. And I don't know how one deals with, people like Naledi Pandor and that, the whole anti-Zionist, it's a very complicated problem, but I mean, starting anti-Zionism, which amounts a lot of the time to anti-Semitism in South Africa, and it destroys, like as the courts have said, it destroys the fabric of our multicultural society. So I know it's something that we're working with, but I was just interested in what you think of how we can, deal with these issues, because obviously there's freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but there's also limits to that. And when we have politicians denying Jewish people's right to live in Israel and Israel's right to exist, like some people in the ANC, it's a big problem. So yeah.
Actually,
Thank
it's
you.
good that you asked that, because you know that the Secretary of State was here from the U.S. Recently, like in the past few days, like on Tuesday, it was Women's Day.
Yes.
But anyway, he was here. And I watched Naledi Pandor talking. One of the things she said, because I'm trying here that we separate the state from the party. Many people in the ANC are sympathetic to and in general, South Africans, maybe specifically Black South Africans, are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, and it comes back from the history, South Africans normally would gravitate towards people who they perceive to be victims of human rights. But Naledi Pandor, when Secretary Blinken was here, she said, South Africa still believes in the two-state solution. She said that, I didn't say it, she said it. It's important for you to actually see that as the African National Congress as a party, has a certain view about Israel, but then there's the issue of the state, and our constitution separates the state from the party. And obviously, in the past 28 years, the ANC has been grappling on how to implement that. And there's a lot of influence within the African National Congress about the issue of Israel and Palestine. But the official position of the country, they still believe in the two-state solution for Israel. And that's the official position. What Naledi as a person thinks and any other ANC people think, I think for us as South Africans, is their personal opinion. But what we know, the official position is that South Africa still has diplomatic relations with Israel.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at my presentation, you'll pick that up. It's just that I wasn't talking about it, so I kind of threw it in, so that when people read that presentation, they understand that South Africa still has relations, diplomatic relations with Israel. What ANC people in their personal capacity as party people think or say about Israel does not necessarily represent the official position of the country. But as ANC party people, they are very sympathetic to the issue of Palestine, but not also exclusively the ANC members, but also in general in society. Most South Africans are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. So if you look at my presentation, you will just pick that line, because I was trying exactly to kind of address exactly what you are saying. But if you Google what Naledi said to Secretary of State Blinken, you will pick this thing up.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I just know, from speaking to the Israeli ambassador and that in South Africa, he struggled to get meetings with with state officials and that, and to discuss like water, technology, environment. But that's a whole other discussion we can have.
Yeah, but we can actually continue this discussion outside this through email.
Yeah.
But what I want to sensitize you to, there's been a lot of capturing the administrative, the administrators in the state when the previous president was president. So there's a lot that has gone right, a lot that has gone wrong. All of this is in the public space. But what's important for us as South Africans, this is what we stick to, and we will not move from. There has to be separation of state and party. You can believe what you want to believe, obviously, within the constraints of the Constitution, but you will not impose your views on all of us just because you believe what you believe. So this is still something that South Africa is grappling with, and it's very, very interesting. But the debate continues.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
So we only have like a few minutes, like 5 minutes maximum. So
I will try to be quick. Hello, Mendisa. Let me try to have two quick questions. I'm from Rwanda, and from reading your bio, we have Lund Raoul Wallenberg Institute in common. So happy to connect. My reading, I just published a paper on hate speech, and unfortunately in my research, South Africa came up. And when I look at racism in South Africa, especially on social media, there are three spaces I can see. One has to do with the legacy of apartheid that you have as a country dealing with the different groupings in the country in terms of racism, xenophobia, and whatever we call it. There is also the space about xenophobia of South Africans, especially black South Africans, against so-called Africans, and those are the terms that are used, so Africans from other parts of the continent. And the third space of racism and xenophobia is this problem of diaspora Africans in South Africa who actually are very much active in their own countries. And my research was on that. For example, Congolese groups who do hate speech from South Africa, including calls for genocide. So now, your presentation was wonderful in telling us things around the very strong, renowned constitutionalism of South Africa. What I missed a little bit was the practice of it. how much really there is still a big gap in terms of dealing with those issues in practice, in reality. That was the question for you, if you can hold a second. I had two very small ones, my friend here, Fentahun. One really is around culture. I mean, I've been saying a few times here, human beings, we are complicated. We are members of different families and different groupings. And you are a group of Jews from Ethiopia now, mostly established in Israel. I want to know more from your experience about are there any residual connection to Ethiopia beyond moving away from Ethiopia, cultural and else? Is there any identification still with Ethiopia? That's one. The second is the sad inheritance of colorism, what we call racism, is this idea of difference based on pigmentation indeed. How is it still really an issue in Ethiopia for the Ethiopian Jews settled in Israel? You said some few things around that. How big is an issue? How does it compare? How does it contrast with other realities of colorism? Thanks.
I'm sorry, Mandisa. Yeah, you can start. I'm sorry for being tough, but just try to take a couple of minutes maximum.
No. Yes. I'm just going to be fast. Certainly the last one that's about the issue of xenophobia. That one is very, very much debated in the country. I think there is a context. South Africa, since 1994, there's been growing inequality in the country. And South Africans who are not as privileged as some of us are feeling that South Africa as a whole is dumping poor people in South Africa. If you recall, President Mbeki once said South Africans are not xenophobic, and that's the official line. This does not mean that everybody is not xenophobic, because all countries have fault lines. But this whole thing that's happening in the social media about South Africans being xenophobic, I actually question it because I live in South Africa and I've seen how those who are not benefiting from this free South Africa. So I kind of link that to South Africans, poor South Africans competing for the same socio-economic space with immigrants from Africa. Because remember that when the ANC took over the country, they kind of removed all forms of, should I say, it became like everyone can come here. And I think now the very same African National Congress is reversing that. They've just had a policy conference to reflect sincerely on this issue of immigration. And as a result, now they are adopting a different stance because they are going to be, I think they project that they could lose the elections. If you see that caravan migration on CNN from Latin America to the US, I want to share with you that you can probably make the comparison with South Africa. So there's been a lot of discussion around this matter, but you can take it also offline, just to get into this issue of xenophobia. That does not mean that everyone in the country, I'm claiming that they are not xenophobic, but by and large, what is construed as xenophobia is poor immigrants from the African continent competing with poor South Africans. And the inequality, socio-economic inequality gap in South Africa has grown immensely since 1994. And I can recommend books for you to read on that topic. The issue of the past continues to linger on. It's a very serious matter. And if it were not for the Constitution, I don't think we would be where we are now. And that's my personal opinion. Because the past continues, you may think that, because these things are not sexy to report globally, but all those institutions that are listed in my presentation, once you are reported to one of them for hate speech, there are many cases, I couldn't cite all of them, there are many cases of people who have been taken to the Human Rights Commission, to the Equality Court, and some of them prominent South African politicians. So also we can talk about that offline so that I can just guide you what is happening. The issue of the diaspora from in South Africa. South Africans are saying once you are in South Africa, please observe the rule of law. I think we are also structured in a manner that says you just have to be compliant with the rule of law. And I think also there hasn't been a lot of education in South Africa. Or rather, should I say, most Black South Africans have not been out of this country. And that's a fact. So when they see these immigrants coming into the country, the current governing party has not been able to educate South Africans about the history of where South Africa, or rather the history of the struggle. And here are some of the issues that we are grappling with as a country. But I don't want us to blame politicians, but I also want us to be careful also about what we read in the social media about the country itself. But the official line is, if you want to come to South Africa, you can come anytime as long as you come through the border post, so to speak, the port of entry. And I think this is where the tension then arises, because you find many African immigrants in South Africa who have entered the country illegally. And now, this thing is playing itself out in a very serious matter now, and it's worrying actually all of us, given what has happened in the past few weeks. I don't know if you have seen it on BBC, illegal migrants from Lesotho. If you can imagine, Lesotho is inside South Africa, so to speak, in terms of geographical location. So people from Lesotho have always come to South Africa, but now there's growing criminality also linked to people from Lesotho, something that we have never seen before. And these are the worrying trends that are beginning to make it out into the public space.
Thank you. Thanks, Mandisa.
Thank you, Felix. I'll try to be brief. Yes, we still have residual connection, not only residual connection, an active connection with Israel. We go and visit Ethiopia. We go and visit Ethiopia once in a while. In general terms, with the Ethiopian-Israeli community, there is a flourishing opportunity of making business in Ethiopia. There is a big connection, and the Ethiopian business people are coming to Israel and expanding their possibility of expanding their business opportunities here in Israel. On top of that, we, the Ethiopian Jews in particular, Ethiopians in general, believe wherever your umbilical cord is buried, you are connected to that place forever. Especially growing up in a village, despite all the harsh situations that we've been. The thing is, I didn't know how the past Jewish dynasties used to be, when the Jewish people were in power, how life was then. I'm used to the life, very recent life. And that is the thing that I know. As a child, I enjoyed every little piece. Although when I go to school, I was discriminated against, but in the village, I lived, happy life. And therefore, we still have this a connection with Ethiopia. And I believe it won't be long before I bring my children to visit the village where I was born and raised, and for them to see and learn and understand what life was like for me when I grew up. So that is for you, first question. The second question is the color issue within Israel. I believe anything that you do and the way you want to be perceived in a society depends on you. That means I come in such a very clear determination and self-definition of my being as a Jew from Ethiopia. And no one can go and shake that very truth, historical truth. And I don't let anyone to come and question my being Jewish. Just to this extent, I can give you, some of the things that I can come. When I was in Australia, just bear with me 1 second. This is painful, what I'm going to say, but this is the truth. Even within the Jewish community, especially the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community who question the Jewish Ethiopians for being real Jews. When I was in the job as an emissary of the United Israel Appeal in Sydney, Australia, I used to go to this very Ashkenazi shul every Friday, Saturday, holidays. The Chazan, the person who's leading the services, who is also a rabbi, I asked him if he could get me a set of tefillin. I don't know if you know what a tefillin is. It's something, part of the Jewish prayer, that you lay a tefillin every day besides Shabbat. And I asked him to get me a set of that. Yeah. And he says to me, he got me those sets, and he says to me, do you want me to show you how? I say, I know how, but I want you to show me your way. And he says, he shows me his way, and then he says, you know what, Fentahun, you come to shul every day, etc., etc., etc. But I would like to suggest to you that you should do some, symbolic circumcision, so you will be actually full Jewish the way I wanted. And he continues on saying, you have beautiful kids, and I would like for my children to be marrying with children. I say to him, I was shocked, first of all. I say to him, listen, if I were to go through this hardship and keeping my religion, not only me, my parents and their parents before them for many centuries and millennia, if all of this hardship was to get married, for my children to get married with the youth, I would have forfeit this for a long time ago. And I say, you know what? I don't want my kids to get married with those children. So this is how I see things. I know who I am, and this is what the Ethiopian Jewish community is about. No one is going to pushing them around, because this is my home like anyone else. If anything, you have to change your opinion. You have to change your stance. You have to change and accept us the way we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Natan, for your inspiring words. And Mandisa, thank you so much, too, for joining us, hopefully next year in person. And I also want to reiterate exactly what Fentahun said. Nobody has the right to define the other. Period. Nobody has the right to define the other. We all have an inalienable right to define ourselves. And the Jewish people, as a collective identity, if you want to call that, as a people, as a nation, of all the people in the world, have the absolute right to define who we are. And those of us who are fighting and committed to anti-Semitism never allow anybody to define us but ourselves. Whether we're white, whether we're black, whether Zionism is legitimate or not legitimate, whether we need to accept another element of another religion to be whole, it's enough. And liberal racism, liberal racists, that mindset, that colonial racist mindset always blames the victim. Always. They look to the victim. If a woman is raped or abused, the judges used to look at the woman and say, where were you? Why were you there? How were you dressed? How were you acting? They blame the victim, not the perpetrator. When African American men were disenfranchised, in the legacy of the United States of America, which you know better than me, right? The white liberals used to say, well, African American men are lazy, but they're aggressive. You blame the victim. And it's enough that when people are trying to grapple with anti-Semitism, that they look at the Jew as not whole because we don't have the Christian understanding of what a Messiah is. And we have to be helped or saved or unblinded, if that's a proper word. And when the liberals on campus tell the young Jewish students here and our faculty members that Israel is a problem, and they start quoting vile anti-Semitism, I take pride in the fact that we have at ISGAP this notion of ISGAP-only conversations. That this is a safe space where we can discuss, debate, and argue as intellectuals, as scholars, based on scholarship. But I draw the line, and I'm being very serious, if people are bringing in racist or sexist or homophobic or anti-Semitic or any other form of hatred and pass it off as scholarship, I will not tolerate it. There is a line. Everything goes. You don't have to agree. We can debate with vigor, but always respect the other. Don't define the other. And I think the words of in my opening remarks of Emmanuel Levinas, we practice humility. We have to be humble because we don't know much, ultimately. Never mind within ourselves, we don't have the burden to define the other. Let's perfect ourselves. It's a big enough challenge. And what Levinas said based on Talmudic teachings is the moment we see our face in the face of the other, that's when we're human. We need the other to be human, and you cannot see the other, you cannot see yourself in the other if you have the audacity and the ignorance and the racism to start defining the other in your perception of what the other ought to be. That is colonialism. That is chaos. That is brutality. It never ends well. So on that note, with a little bit of emotion, enjoy your tea break and continue the discussion and continue the debate and continue the argument, but with humility and respect. Thank you.